The contract gets deeper and part 3 begins now.
Sarah was stunned. She grabbed her phone and went over to her window. Charles was outside, standing in the middle of a burning heart-shaped firework. He saw her in the window and shouted, "Sarah, I love you. Happy birthday." As it all began to sink in, Sarah realized that she couldn't possibly feel sorry for herself, for both her sister and her lover had remembered her birthday and cared for her. Clearly, Charles had just wanted to give her a surprise. Suddenly, she began to cry. Hearing her cries down the phone, Sophia asked, "What's the matter with you? Why are you crying?" She quickly explained what was going on to Sophia and told her she would call her back later. Once she had hung up the phone, she ran downstairs to greet Charles. Charles smiled and opened his arms, waiting for Sarah's embrace. Then when Sarah ran into his arms, he immediately picked her up, spun her around, and kissed her. The burning fireworks were so beautiful, illuminating the dark night and reflecting their romantic love. They stood in the heart-shaped fireworks and kissed so passionately that they forgot there were people passing by them. At this point, Sarah was so moved that her heart felt as though it was going to fly out of her chest. Therefore, when Charles hugged and kissed her, she couldn't help but hug him as tightly as she could. At that moment, no part of her resisted the contact between man and woman, only wanting to experience this happy moment fully. After a long time, Charles loosened her, breathed softly with his forehead against hers, and asked, "Are you happy?" Sarah sighed, looked at him deeply, and nodded. Then Charles asked, "Are you moved?" Sarah nodded again with tears trickling down her cheeks. She couldn't remember a time when she had felt this happy before. It is a happy thing when there is someone who cares about you and does beautiful things for you. Charles gently wiped her tears and asked softly, "Sarah, do you really love me? How much do you love me?" Sarah looked at him intensely. She didn't know quite what to say, but hugged him tightly and said, "Charles, I care about you. I really care about you." She didn't know how to express her thoughts, just repeating that sentence again and again. She loved him with all her heart, but she had no confidence that a man like him would treat her with such love and care. Thus her love was full of fear. But tonight, after seeing all he had done for her, she began to convince herself that perhaps that was all unnecessary. Charles looked into her eyes and said, "You always doubt my sincerity, but tonight, have you truly felt my love?" Sarah finally nodded and hugged him tightly. "Charles, thank you." Charles smiled happily. They hugged until all the fireworks had burned out. Noticing how many people had stopped watching them, Sarah felt shy and nuzzled into Charles. Chuckling, Charles said, "Aren't you going to ask me to come upstairs?" Sarah quickly grabbed his hand to take him upstairs, but Charles said, "Wait a minute." Then, he went back to his car and retrieved a big cake and a bunch of flowers. Sarah shyly took the flowers and sniffed them. Then, they took each other's hands and went upstairs together. Sarah was so shy, as if she was a high school student who was secretly dating her crush. When they got back into Sarah's home, Charles took out another big bag of things. He handed a paper bag to her and said, "I have spent a long time choosing this, and I've finally picked this one for you. Hurry, see if it fits you or not." Sarah took the bag and found a beautiful dress inside it, made of a divine, silky material. She looked at Charles doubtfully. He smiled. "Hurry, try it on. Let me see if it looks beautiful on you." Sarah took the dress and went into her room. But the moment that she opened the bag, she hesitated because the skirt was, in fact, a suspender skirt. She looked at it for a while, then went to try it on. As expected, her chest was half exposed. Looking at herself in the mirror, she saw how glamorous she was in this sexy red dress. Sarah had never worn such clothes before, so she was hesitant as to whether it was suitable to go out and meet Charles in this dress. From the outside, Charles asked, "Sarah, are you okay? Why not come out?" Sarah responded, I'm okay." Then she opened her wardrobe and found a shawl. Although the color didn't match, it was a good way to cover her skin. Wearing the shawl, she dared to open the door and go out. To her surprise, Charles had prepared a candlelit dinner for her. The candle, the red wine, the music, all reminded her of a scene in a romantic film. Sarah was in shock, saying, "This is unbelievable. I am so surprised that you have prepared all of this." Noticing that Sarah had emerged with a shawl on her shoulder, Charles was a little disappointed and asked, "Why are you wearing a shawl? Don't you want me to see you in this dress?" Sarah walked towards him, awkwardly, and answered, "I'm just not used to it." Charles looked at her but didn't ask her more. They sat together, drank the red wine, ate the birthday cake, and chatted. Sarah didn't know why Charles' eyes looked so gentle and sexy tonight. His gaze made her want him badly. She didn't know how to avoid his soulful eyes, just holding his cup and drinking. "Sarah, you are not so good with your drink. Perhaps you shouldn't drink too much. Eat some cake." Charles suddenly sat beside her, with one hand holding her gently and the other feeding her cake. Sarah looked into his eyes and ate the cake as her face turned red. Charles suddenly moved in close to her and ate the cake crumbs on her lips. Then he smiled and said affectionately, "You eat like a little cat." Sarah lowered her head, a little embarrassed. Charles took his cup again and drank with her. Sarah couldn't stop thinking how tonight was just so beautiful, like a fairy tale that she wanted to enjoy every minute of with him. However, how could Sarah truly know Charles' intentions? Charles was a big wolf, and Sarah was Little Red Riding Hood. How could she possibly fight against the big wolf? At last, Sarah was a little drunk. Either that, or she was sinking into Charles' charming, gentle eyes. Charles approached her and said in a low voice, "Sarah, you are so beautiful tonight. You are really beautiful. I really want to kiss you." He was already leaning in to kiss her as he spoke. Sarah felt so limp and numb, just wanting to sink into his care. Seeing him approaching, she closed her eyes, enchanted by the magic. Charles gently kissed her sweet lips, and at the same time, hugged her and removed her shawl. It was late at night, and the stars were shining outside. In the room, a very romantic night was brooding. Sarah felt dizzy and sleepy. The alcohol was in full effect now. She was hot all over and longed to escape from it. When Charles took off her shawl, she didn't resist. She felt as though she was being released. Charles' kiss made her heart skip a beat. She didn't know why she didn't expect it. Perhaps because she was wary of expecting too much when with her beloved man. Alternatively, perhaps tonight was so wonderful that she didn't want to destroy it, but nonetheless, she followed her own mind and did something she favored. She didn't know what was going on. Why did she kiss Charles? She even hugged him and pandered to his crazy advances. Charles felt happy when he noticed her giving in to him. Then he picked her up, pinned her down on the sofa, and skillfully removed her clothes. Sarah felt so hot that she didn't know what was going on. It seemed that only Charles' kisses could comfort her. "Charles, Charles," she murmured. "Yes," Charles answered. He kissed her, unfastened her bra strap, and stared at the half-naked woman who was lying in front of him. He also felt hot all over. "Sarah, we can move to the bedroom," he said lightly. Without Sarah agreeing to this, he picked her up and quickly walked to the bed. She twisted her body a little halfway. Whether she was uncomfortable or wanted to revolt, he didn't know. Charles hurried to put her on the bed and began to kiss her again. When Sarah felt the soft bed, she seemed to sober up. "Charles, where are we?" she asked suddenly. "Do you love me?" said Charles, avoiding her question. Sarah was still in a daze. She didn't know how to reply to him. Noticing her state of drowsiness, Charles kissed her passionately. Soon, her skirt was halfway off and her bra was sliding off her shoulders. He felt like he was going crazy. He missed this woman day and night, and now she was lying in front of him, charming and beautiful. Charles leaned over her, touched her, and said, "Sarah. Sarah, can I have you?" Sarah made no response. Then Charles gave in to his own desire. Sarah seemed not to resist him, or she had already fallen asleep and was unable to fight against him. He finally succumbed to all his wishes and kissed her entire body. At last, he put his manhood between her legs and was ready to enter her. At this moment, he stopped. He held her face and asked, "Sarah, can I? Can I?" He began to sweat, and his voice became hoarse. Sarah slowly opened her eyes and looked at the man towering above her. She still seemed to be confused. Charles couldn't stop kissing her to relieve his hunger for her body. "Sarah, can I? Can I?" Sarah felt very comfortable and groaned. It appeared to answer him. Charles could no longer control himself. He started to find her vagina and went to thrust inside her. However, Sarah woke up at this point. She felt that something was about to invade her. It was hard and hot. She hurried to retreat and opened her eyes again. Looking at Charles' face, she hastily said, "Charles, what are you trying to do?" "Sarah, I want you," he replied in a hoarse voice. Then he prepared to enter again. "No, Charles." Sarah woke up completely now. She hurried to get rid of him, trying to push him away. At this key moment, Charles stared at her with fire in his eyes. "Don't you want me? Don't you love me? Don't do that. Let me go. Let me go. We can't. You promised me. Let me go." Sarah struggled to push him away. Charles felt annoyed. Didn't the woman know that he may die if he stopped at such a critical moment? He asked again. "You were enjoying it just now. Don't you want it? Let me go. Please, you have promised. Let me go." Sarah was about to cry. She didn't expect that she may lose her virginity after drinking a little. Although she loved him very much and he moved her tonight, she couldn't have sex with him before she confirmed his true feelings for her and she became his forever. This was her principle, and she was not a fool. Charles felt a little hurt, but Sarah was still struggling. She was even nearly crying. It was clear that he was behaving like a rapist. How could he do that? Therefore, he just said, "Okay, I'm letting you go." Then he left and walked to the bathroom. Soon, the sound of rushing water could be heard from the bathroom. Sarah lay on the bed and suddenly felt bitter. Why did she feel Charles still didn't love her, and he just regarded her as a mistress? Charles walked out of the bathroom after a long time. Sarah had already gotten dressed and was laid down, facing away from him. Charles stood beside the bed and looked at her for a while before asking her gently, "Sarah, what are you resisting in your heart?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pretended to be asleep. Charles didn't know what to say, so he dried his hair and laid down beside her. Noticing his presence, Sarah was uneasy and tense. Given that she was pretending to be asleep, she couldn't wake up suddenly. She just closed her eyes and tightly seized the sheet. It seemed that she could protect herself in this way. However, Charles hugged her and whispered into her ear, "Stop pretending. I won't do anything tonight. But I can't understand why you are always on your guard with me. What's the matter with you?" Sarah finally opened her eyes and answered in a light voice, "Sorry, but can you please leave me some space so I can keep my dignity? I think we should let nature take its course if two people love each other. Do you think that I am an irresponsible man?" Sarah finally turned around and looked at him. "I believe you can be responsible, but I can't keep a man just because I am going to have his child. If you need to get married to me just because of responsibility, can we ever be happy?" Charles kept silent. Suddenly, she revealed the doubt in her heart. "Charles, do you really love me? Am I the only woman in your heart?" Charles looked at her. His face was darkened in the shadows, and nothing could be seen except his sparkling eyes. He seemed to sink into his own thoughts, remaining silent. Sarah asked again, "Do you love me?" At last, Charles sighed and hugged her. "Rest now. It's late. I need to go to work tomorrow." Sarah thought she must be a sensitive and neurotic woman. It seemed that she always had no sense of security with emotion. As things stood, she felt unsafe with Charles, especially when he hadn't answered her question the last time they met. She didn't know how to get along with him, as if the love between them, which had already been so difficult to get, was now beyond repair. Since dating Charles, Sarah didn't think that he had been with other women, but she still knew that nothing was certain. Even when he was kind to her, she knew that something was wrong. It appeared that he behaved the same way with everyone that he dated. Therefore, Sarah considered herself to be just an ordinary woman to him. Who on earth could conquer his heart? It seemed that no one knew. Recently, the company has been very busy. Charles seldom sent her flowers to show his love, even when he was in the office throughout the day. Sarah was also busy attending her own business. They rarely had any contact with each other. It did, however, give her a lot of time to think about their relationship. After a lot of contemplation, she was able to see clearly that she could do nothing about their love except sigh and let it go. At this moment, her phone suddenly pinged. It was a message. She thought it might be Charles inviting her to have dinner that night. After all, she was about to get off work. However, it was an unknown number saying, "Are you free tonight? We can have a talk at Fairy Coffee House 21. Sarah thought someone might have sent a message to the wrong person, so she just ignored it. After a few moments, another message was received. "Though we are unfamiliar, I think it's necessary for us to talk to each other. It would be mutually beneficial to our future." Sarah still thought someone had got the wrong number. However, she replied politely, "Sorry, I think you have the wrong number. I don't know you." After a minute with no reply, Sarah began to be absorbed by her work again. Charles didn't come out of his office after work hours were over. Most people had left. and soon there were just 1 or 2 new staff as well as her and Charles. Sarah called Charles, but he told her, "I have some important work to do tonight, so I can't be with you. You can go home by yourself, and I will find you later." As expected, since she had asked him about his feelings for her, Charles had become indifferent to her. She didn't know the reason. Now he could hardly accompany her because he always said that he had too much work to do. Maybe it was true after all, he was the president of a company. Sarah couldn't help but feel that he was indifferent to her though, as he used to take care of her in the past, even if he was busy. Now, however, things had changed. Sarah didn't ask him to explain and hung up the phone to leave work. After she had walked out of the company building, her phone rang again. Sarah secretly hoped that Charles was calling her. Maybe he would comfort her now. Disappointingly, it was the same unknown number from earlier in the day. She frowned and hesitated, but answered, "Hello? Who's that?" "Are you Sarah?" It sounded like a woman. Sarah paused, wondering whether she knew her. "Yes, I am." "Who's calling, please?" "It's not important, but if you want to know, that's okay. We can meet. I am waiting for you at Fairy Coffee House now. We can talk about Charles." "Charles?" Sarah was suspicious as soon as she heard his name. Since he had started dating her, he hadn't been with any other woman. He had not gone to his apartment that was especially for his mistresses. Assuming that she was only trying to trouble her, Sarah said coldly, "I think I have nothing to discuss with you about Charles. You can call him directly. Bye-bye." "Don't you want to know who Charles' beloved woman is?" the woman said hurriedly, seemingly afraid of Sarah hanging up on her. Then she laughed maliciously. "You little puppet. No wonder Charles plays around with you. If you don't come, you will regret it. I can let you know what kind of person Charles is. I can help you to get out of his trap. Now I can give you half an hour and wait for you at the coffee house. If you don't come, I won't bother you anymore. Then you will be screwed, stupid woman." As soon as she finished speaking, the woman hung up the phone. Sarah didn't say a word. Clearly, that woman was provoking her. However, Sarah couldn't explain why she now felt so uneasy. She did have no sense of security with Charles. She didn't know whether she should meet that woman or not, and hesitated under the company building. Suddenly, a taxi drove up next to her and asked, "Miss, where are you going?" Sarah got in the taxi silently. The driver asked again, "Where are you going?" Sarah was lost in thought, and then she looked at her watch. 10 minutes had passed already. She hesitated for a while and replied, "Fairy Coffee House, please." The car drove away. She arrived at Fairy Coffee House on time. The woman was waiting for her. She was a slender woman with curly hair, a tired face, and large alluring breasts. Sarah looked at her for a little while, then walked over and sat in front of her. She asked in a cold voice, "Who are you? What do you want to say?" The woman raised her eyebrows and sneered, "I thought you wouldn't come. I was just about to leave. I suppose you wouldn't have come if you weren't sure about Charles." She paused for a while, then answered Sarah's question, "Im Charles' mistress?" Sarah looked at her with indifference and said, "I've seen his mistresses. He cut off communication with all his mistresses after he started dating me." The woman raised her head and laughed out loud, then stared at Sarah. "Is that what he told you? Do you trust him?" Sarah glared at her coldly. The woman said again, "Charles did distance himself from some of his mistresses, but not all of them. Did you think he was willing to only be with an old virgin? Im Charles' current mistress. Didn't you know that? Has he been lying to you? Idiot."